Hi, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're looking at 4 more cards that are hilariously underpowered. The kind of card that confounded me as a new player, but also brings a little smile to my face as a veteran player. We're talking about cards whose heyday was in Limited and probably aren't going to see play in Commander anytime soon. But who knows? The first card on our list today is Ancient Kavu. It's a 4-mana 3/3 red Kavu that says pay 2 colorless mana. Ancient Kavu becomes colorless until end of turn. First off, I just want to appreciate that this guy can't even commit to being colorless beyond the current turn. He's just too old. He can't do it anymore. He doesn't have it in him. He's just too old. Now, I'm sure this guy is coming to us from a meta where creature colors matter, and I'm sure Ancient Kavu was up there with the best of them, dodging and weaving, blue elemental blasts, and Circle of Protection red. But nowadays this ability kind of fell off and isn't really relevant. It still kind of matters when you're deciding blockers against creatures that have protection from red or intimidate, but other than that, this really doesn't do much of anything except it's kind of like a flex on people. It is worth noting though that there are a couple of popular colorless board wipes that get rid of creatures that have 1 or more colors. How funny would it be if somebody put out an Ugin the Spirit Dragon -X where X is 4 to wipe the board, but in response you pay the 2 to make Ancient Kavu colorless until end of turn, and then on your turn you swing in with Ancient Kavu, do exactly 3 points to Ugin, and Ancient Kavu wipes out the Ugin. Tragically, Wizards of the Coast predicted the Ancient Kavu counter meta, and they knew Ancient Kavu was set to make Ugin the Spirit Dragon unplayable. So in an effort to make this new Planeswalker viable, they added the +2, which allows Ugin to snipe anything on the board for exactly 3 damage, dooming Ancient Kavu to my list and not the top of the meta. That being said, I think the real obstacle that's preventing Ancient Kavu from really taking off in formats like Legacy and EDH is the fact that there are colorless creatures and they don't even make you pay 2 mana every turn. There are even some that don't die to artifact removal because they're not artifacts, they're just creatures, which means they get all the upside of being colorless without any downside. There are even some of these colorless creatures that are similarly statted to Ancient Kavu, but they generate mana for you. Talk about power creep. And if you're just looking to play Ancient Kavu as a strong mono-red Kavu creature for 4 mana, it's unfortunately been outclassed there too. Flame Tongue Kavu deals 4 damage to a creature as it enters the battlefield for free, and Defiler of Instinct can help reduce the cost of other Kavu you play, including Ancient Kavu. And there's even technically already colorless Kavu creatures if you include changelings like Bloodline Pretender. At least we can say for certain that Ancient Kavu was a strong source of inspiration for future Kavu generations. The second card on our list is Talara's Bane, a 2-mana black sorcery that says target opponent reveals their hand, choose a green or white creature card from it. You gain life equal to that creature card's toughness, then that player discards that card. At first glance, this card seems to have a lot of things going on, but I actually think looks can be deceiving here. The only guarantee when you resolve this spell is that you get to reveal an opponent's hand. You have to choose a green or white creature card to actually make a player discard a card, and that's sort of a big ask. What if you sit down at the table and there is no green or white player in the game? What if you draw this card in the late game and the green-white player is top decking anyway, so they have no cards in their hand? Even if there is somebody playing green and or white at the table and they have a hand of cards, you might whiff on this. Only hitting creatures is already pretty limiting. The payoff for actually landing a hit with this card is pretty disappointing too. You make them discard the card, which is, it's alright, and then you gain life equal to its toughness, which could be something like 7 life, which would be pretty cool, but I imagine more often than not it's going to come down to like 3 toughness. Even in a game of Commander, when you're looking at an opponent's hand and they have like one of those little creatures that's really going to be annoying for you, or a big creature that they're not going to cast anytime soon, I imagine the experienced player will get rid of like the Dranith Magistrate and leave the Colossal Dreadmaw alone, which is likely to be the better play in the long run, but it's not going to help us get much value out of Talara's Bane. If you're specifically looking to remove creatures from somebody's hand, you could play a card like Harsh Scrutiny. It only costs 1 mana and it can hit any creature, period. It doesn't gain you any life, but it can let you scry one, which can be better in a lot of cases. Or if you want to be a little little more sure you can get something out of their hand, you could play Despise, which for the same mana cost as Harsh Scrutiny allows you to hit either a creature or planeswalker from their hand, again with no color restrictions. And nowadays, if you're paying 2 mana to look in an opponent's hand and make them discard a card, it's usually a lot more open-ended, and cards like this that have been printed in recent standard products usually have some kind of clause that make it so it's pretty much impossible to whiff. For example, Traumatic Revelation says target opponent reveals their hand, you can choose a creature or battle from it. If you do, they discard it. If you don't, incubate 3. So if there is no valid target, or if you just don't want to make them discard it and you don't think it's worth it, you do get to incubate 3, which isn't busted, but it's something at least. The card Extract the Truth lets you choose one. You can either look in their hand and choose a creature, enchantment, or planeswalker to make them discard, or you can use it as enchantment removal. I think Talara's Bane could have had its niche and still been playable. If Talara's Bane let you hit any creature, it might be decent, or if Talara's Bane exiled the creature you picked instead of making it go to discard, I think that would be good too, or at least something you might sideboard. But right now, why you would pick this over something like Extract the Truth is just beyond me. The next card on our list today is Horizon Seeker, a 3-mana 3/2 human warrior with Boast for 1 and a green that says search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, then put it into your hand. For some reason, whenever I rediscover this card, my mind automatically thinks of it as ramp, but it's really not ramp at all. If anything, it's like mana fixing or drawing a card that's not very good. Not to mention, this card really doesn't do anything the turn it comes out. If I've got no land for turn and I top deck this card and I play it, I'm still gonna miss my land drop for the turn. Horizon Seeker is really clunky and slow in that respect. Where if I play a card like Jungle Wayfinder or Pilgrim's Eye, I get the land to my hand right away so I can play it and I won't miss my land drop. Also, in both of these examples, it doesn't matter if the creature lives or dies. Once it hits the battlefield, the land is in my hand. Where for Horizon Seeker, it needs to at least survive until your next combat step so you can swing with it and pay the 2 for the Boast ability. So you're paying 2 mana to get basically what the ETB would have been if you played Jungle Wayfinder. When does this trade-off become worth it? I think you need at least 3 Boast triggers over the course of the game to make this card really worth it. And even if you're playing a deck where you want to be attacking with your creatures every turn, I would still think Pilgrim's Eye would be better for that, considering it has flying so you can stack a bunch of buffs on it and get in with that evasion ability, where Horizon Seeker is just asking to be lightning bolted, doom bladed, or otherwise blocked with a bigger creature. This card to me almost feels like a watered down version of Primeval Herald, where Primeval Herald comes out a turn later, it still searches your deck for a land when it enters the battlefield. So both Horizon Seeker and Primeval Herald are getting you the land that you need at about the same turn every game. And whenever Primeval Herald attacks, you get that trigger again. So you're basically guaranteed the 1 land with the same opportunity to get an additional land every combat without having to pay 2 mana each time through the Boast ability. And another card I'm reminded of when I'm looking at Horizon Seeker is the Yavimaya Elder. The Elder is a 3-mana 2/1, but when it dies, you get to search your library for up to 2 land cards, reveal them, then put them into your hand, then you shuffle. And the Elder also has an activated ability for 2 mana, where you can sack it to draw a card. The interesting thing here is if you compare Yavimaya Elder and Horizon Seeker by their mana cost plus the cost to activate the ability, it comes out to exactly the same, but Yavimaya Elder will get you 3 cards in your hand, 2 of which are basic lands that you searched for, and the other one is a card you drew fresh off the top of the deck. And Horizon Seeker gets you a 3/2 and 1 land. So if you were ever thinking about putting Horizon Seeker in a deck that isn't combat focused just for that mana fixing, just play Yavimaya Elder instead. It'll get you 2 lands for the same cost to activate, and it'll draw you a new card. Plus, it's still a human, so if you're doing human shenanigans, Yavimaya Elder works for that too. I think Horizon Seeker could have been notable and playable if they just let the Boast ability be rampant growth. I wouldn't consider it overpowered if my opponent paid 3 mana for a 3/2 just to swing at me next turn with it and pay the cost for a normal rampant growth to get the effect of a rampant growth. Now the next card on our list is deserving of a proper introduction, so please let me pitch this card to you. The flavor text reads, "Once I was human. Now I am far more." This card is a blue creature spell. Maybe it's bringing to mind those crazy transforming characters like Delver of Secrets, but this card has a mana value value of 8. Maybe now you're thinking of a card like Hoverguard Sweepers, where its power and toughness is sort of low compared to its mana cost, but it has some kind of ability that's supposed to make up for it. Pretty sound reasoning, except that this card is a wizard with power and toughness 1/1. Now you're likely thinking, wow, what is this creature's ability? Does it get +1/+1 for every card in a player's hand? Does it wipe the board? Does it have flying and take extra turns for you? The final card on our list today is Scornful Egotist, an 8 mana 1/1 with the ability Morph. Morph is an alternate way to cast this card, where we can pay 3 colorless mana to put it face down on the battlefield as a 2/2 creature with no other abilities. With Scornful Egotist, I can pay 8 mana to make a 1/1 creature, or 3 mana to make a 2/2 creature, or I can pay 3 mana to make a 2/2 creature and then pay 1 extra mana to make my 2/2 creature into a 1/1 creature. If you're feeling really puzzled and confused by this card, you're not alone. The first time I saw this card in a binder at my LGS, I looked at it for probably 45 minutes trying to understand why this card would exist and what I'm missing here. This really is an 8 mana 1/1 that has the ability that you can pay 3 to make it a 2/2. That's it. To really put this in perspective, let's look at some other 8-drop blue creatures and compare their abilities to Scornful Egotist. Ancient Silver Dragon has some evasion, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you get to draw a bunch of cards and you have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. Stormtide Leviathan, on the other hand, gives itself evasion by turning all lands into islands, and it also makes it so creatures without flying or island walk can't attack. Another pattern you might be noticing here is that both of these creatures have power and toughness 8/8. And another thing, whoever eroded this card is messed up because they gave Scornful Egotist the creature type Human Wizard. The only thing beyond human Scornful Egotist is a wizard. Now his flavor text is just him bragging about the fact that he's employed. Did he think he transcended his humanity and he's just wrong about that? Or maybe he stopped being human for a while, but then they legally changed the definition of what a human is, and now he falls within it again? Because I'm with Scornful Egotist on this one. He's looking more like a toothpaste ghost than a human to me. He looks like if Wildberry Pop-Tarts had a mascot. Anyway, looking at a card like Fugitive Wizard, we can see that a 1/1 blue human wizard with no relevant abilities usually costs about 1 mana. So Scornful Egotist is pretty expensive. And looking at a card like Aether Adept, we can tell that a 3 mana 2/2 usually comes with some kind of relevant ability, so the morph creature is not very competitively statted. Still, if you're looking for a nice 3 mana 2/2 blue human wizard to round out your deck, I would probably go with Aether Adept over Scornful Egotist. And just as a fun fact, if you play the card Docent of Perfection, it creates a blue 1/1 human wizard token, which is functionally the same thing as a Scornful Egotist every time you cast an instant or sorcery spell. So if you want to get in on some of this Scornful Egotist action but don't want to commit 8 mana for a 1/1 with no relevant abilities, start slotting in Docent of Perfection. And that's going to be the complete list. Thank you for watching. My question in the comments for this video is, which of these cards do you identify with the most? Are you more of an Ancient Kavu kind of person or a Horizon Seeker kind of person? And also, if you're running any of these cards in your decks, please let me know. How are you making them good? How are you getting use out of them? Anyway, thank you again for watching.